His sweep of hair, as black as treacle bobbing into his impish green eyes, had her swooning when he'd winked and tilted his head after saying good-night at the gate like a proper gentleman. They had arranged to meet by the duck pond the following afternoon, and, just before she had to leave to be home in time for tea, he had swept her up in his arms and kissed her with such passion that she knew he was going to be the one for her. Love had blossomed for them in the weeks that followed, meeting in secret, of course, as her parents had taken an instant dislike to Jimmy. They hadn't even given him a chance to show his worth when he'd called at the house one time, with a beautiful bunch of wildflowers that he'd picked himself from the hilly field section in Greenwich Park. He'd even bought a jolly yellow satin ribbon from the haberdashery shop near the station to tie around the bouquet, but Mother had refused to even let him into the house before sending him away with a flea in his ear. And then later, right after Mr. Chamberlain's wireless broadcast declaring war on the 3rd of September, Jimmy had signed up to do his duty for king and country, and it was as if the light had gone out in her life. Connie had promised to wait for him to return, and had prayed every morning and evening that her darling Jimmy would stay safe and come back home from wherever it was they had sent him. She couldn't even bear to consider the possibility of a different outcome for her true love, and believed in doing so was only to tempt fate. Although Jimmy hadn't replied to any of her letters since he went away, or even sent one of those miniature, colourful postcards like her best friend Kitty had received from her own sweetheart, Stanley. Kitty kept it tucked inside a compartment in her handbag so as to feel close to him, and Connie so wished she had a postcard too. A few words from him to hold on to keep Jimmy close to her always. All she had was the pink teddy bear. If she had heard from Jimmy, then perhaps she would have found the courage to tell him about their unborn child before now, instead of waiting until he came back to her. Or maybe it was better this way. She would be 18 soon and knew that Jimmy would marry her right away when he heard about the baby, and they wouldn't need her parents' permission after all. Pressing the palm of her right hand into the small of her back, Connie carefully lowered herself into the high-backed chair next to her bed in the Spartan bedroom. Aunt Maud was a frugal woman who saw no virtue in home comforts or niceties, preferring to live a martyred existence that Connie was also expected to endure for the duration of her incumbency. Her punishment, it seemed, for falling in love and then allowing Jimmy to be intimate with her that one time. If only she had known their moment of passion would make a baby, then she would have held out until their wedding night. So now the joy of being with Jimmy, the music and gaiety, cushions and comfort and glorious indoor bathroom that Connie had grown up with at home in London's exclusive Black Heath, were all memories. There was no softness or joy in Aunt Maud's world. With an outside privy at the end of the long garden, which, even in the summer months, was grim and cold, making the chilblains on Connie's toes itch and throb with pain. The inside of the cottage was no better either, with its hard stone floor and damp walls, and so it was as if all the colour had drained from Connie's life. When she had first arrived in Tyndaldale, Aunt Maud had let Connie take a walk out into the village, where she had met a couple of farm girls sitting on a bench in the village square sharing a bag of chips. Sisters Winnie and Edie were around the same age as Connie, and so she had enjoyed chit-chatting with them and pretending, if only for a short while, that everything in her life was still the same, happy and gay. But Aunt Maud had stopped the trips to the village as soon as Connie's fecund belly had started to round, and so she hadn't had the pleasure of Winnie and Edie.